The Galactic Council had one universal truth that every species agreed upon: stay away from the dragon worlds. For 3,000 years, the massive reptilian beasts had terrorized anyone foolish enough to venture near their territory. Ships disappeared without a trace. Colonies were reduced to ash. Even the mighty war fleets with their planet-cracking weapons had learned to give the dragon systems a wide berth. Commander Vex of the Defense Force had heard all the stories. Tales of scales harder than, breath that could melt through starship hulls, and an intelligence that surpassed most civilized species. Dragons were the boogeyman of space, the monsters that made hardened soldiers check their scanners twice before jumping to hyperspace. That's why she couldn't believe the readings on her tactical display. "Run those scans again, Lieutenant," she ordered, her blue-scaled hands gripping the command chair's armrests. The bridge of the ADX hummed with nervous energy as her crew processed the impossible data streaming across their screens. "Ma'am, I've run it 6 times. The readings are consistent." Lieutenant Kex, a young with worried crimson eyes, turned from his station. "There's a human ship in the system, alive, and it's been there for 3 standard days." Stomach lurched. Humans were the species to join the Galactic Council, barely 2 centuries into space travel. They were brave to the point of stupidity, curious beyond reason, and had an unfortunate tendency to poke things that should be left alone. But even humans weren't crazy enough to fly into dragon territory. "Were they? Any distress signals?" she asked. "Negative, Commander. In fact, they're broadcasting on open channels. Music from what our translation algorithms can determine." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Felt a chill run down her spine. Dragons were known to toy with their prey, but this was beyond anything in the archives. "Set course for the system edge," she commanded. "Maximum stealth. If we can't raise them on comms, we'll need visual confirmation of whatever's left." The quantum drives engaged with a subtle vibration. Around her, the crew worked with quiet efficiency, but could see the tension in their movements. They all knew the stories. Ship crews found fused to their command chairs, entire space stations twisted into unrecognizable sculptures of metal and flesh. Dragons didn't just kill, they created art from their victims' remains. 3 hours later, they dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge, sensors immediately sweeping for threats. The system contained 7 planets, all of them scorched and lifeless except for the third world, Prime. That's where the dragons had made their home, turning a once beautiful garden world into a fortress of volcanic glass and twisted metal spires. "Contact bearing Mark 77, distance 12 million kilometers," reported Sensor Chief Malik, his tentacles dancing across his control interface. "It's definitely human configuration, appears to be intact." On screen, the main display flickered to life, showing a sleek human vessel hanging in space like a silver needle. It was one of their exploration craft, built for long-range reconnaissance. No weapons to speak of, minimal armor, but equipped with the best sensors and communication equipment human technology could provide. It should have been a dragon's appetizer. Instead, it looked completely undamaged. "Commander," Lieutenant Kex called out, his voice tight with disbelief. "I'm reading multiple dragon signatures in the area, at least 7 distinct heat sources, all massive class. There. They're circling the human ship." "Circling," leaned forward. "You mean stalking?" "No, ma'am, they appear to be, flying in formation like an escort." The bridge erupted in confused murmurs, raised a scaled hand for silence, her mind racing through possibilities. Dragon behavior was well documented. They attacked anything that wasn't another dragon. There had never been a recorded case of them showing anything resembling restraint or curiosity. "Can we get closer without triggering their territorial response?" she asked. Chief Malik's tentacles twitched nervously. "Unknown, Commander. We're already deeper in their territory than any council ship in recorded history." "Commander," the communications officer interrupted, "I'm picking up transmissions from the human vessel. There. They're talking to someone." "Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled to life, filled with the cheerful voice of a human male. "Absolutely perfect, Ember. The marinade really makes the difference. Hey, could you ask if he wants his rare or well done? I've got about 6 more steaks on the grill, and I want to make sure everyone gets what they like." His blood froze. The human was talking to dragons by name. A rumbling voice responded, deeper than thunder and hot as molten stone. The one called prefers his meat seared on the outside but red within, small fire maker. Your cooking brings honor to the ancient ways. Perfect, I love cooking for people. Beings who appreciate good food. Oh, and tell everyone the potato salad is ready too, made it with those spiced tubers from my. There was a sound that realized with shock was dragon laughter, a deep, pleased rumbling that made this hull vibrate even at this distance. This is impossible, whispered Lieutenant Kex. Found herself agreeing. In 3,000 years of galactic history, no one had ever held a casual conversation with a dragon. The closest anyone had come was screaming before being incinerated. Yet here was a human, apparently hosting some kind of dinner party for the most feared predators in the galaxy. Sir, Chief Malik reported, one of the dragon's signatures is approaching our position. Every alarm system on the bridge should have been screaming. Instead, there was only the gentle hum of normal operations. Outside the viewports, a shape emerged from the darkness, a dragon, but unlike anything in the Council's visual archives. Where the historical records showed twisted, malevolent creatures with scars and battle damage, this dragon was magnificent. Its scales caught and reflected starlight like polished obsidian, and its eyes glowed with intelligence rather than rage. It moved with fluid grace, clearly aware of their presence but showing no signs of aggression. Commander, the communications officer said in a strangled voice, the dragon is hailing us. The dragon is what? Broadcasting on standard council frequencies. Universal translator is active. Felt reality shift around her. Put it through. The voice that emerged from the speakers was ancient, cultured, and impossibly polite. Greetings, vessel of the Defense Force. I am speaker for the collective. You may approach without fear. Our friend has extended his hospitality to all visitors today. Friend's mind struggled to process this information. This is Commander Vex of the starship. May I ask, what's happening here? A cultural exchange, Commander. The human arrived 3 days ago and has been sharing the ancient art of outdoor cooking with our people. We have not experienced such fellowship in many centuries. You are welcome to join us if you wish. The comm channel closed, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Stared at the magnificent dragon floating outside their ship, apparently waiting for their response. Ma'am, Lieutenant Kex said slowly, what are your orders? Looked around the bridge at her crew's faces, a mix of fear, confusion, and desperate curiosity. They were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. First contact protocols had no guidelines for this situation. Take us in, she decided, slowly, and keep all defensive systems powered down. They crept deeper into the system, escorted by the dragon called. As they approached the third planet, more dragons appeared, not attacking or threatening, but curious. They flew alongside the starship like dolphins swimming with an ancient sailing vessel. Prime looked nothing like the scorched wasteland described in council reports. Yes, there were volcanic glass spires and flowing rivers of lava, but there were also vast gardens carved into mountainsides, crystalline structures that caught and amplified sunlight, and what appeared to be carefully tended forests of metallic trees. Commander, Sensor Chief Malik reported, I'm reading a large open area on the planet's surface. The human ship appears to have landed there, and there are many dragon signatures, dozens of them. Any signs of combat, destruction? Negative. In fact, the area appears to have been recently landscaped. There are new structures, shelters, seating areas, what might be a cooking facility. As they entered the planet's atmosphere, could see the impossible scene below. Dragons, massive, magnificent dragons, were gathered in a great circle around a small human figure who appeared to be tending some kind of fire. The smell that hit her as they landed made her mouth water despite her shock. The human looked up as the sporting ramp lowered, waving cheerfully. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and laugh lines around his eyes, wearing what appeared to be a casual shirt and an apron that read, Galaxy's Best Grill Master. Welcome, he called out as a small security team cautiously approached. I'm Specialist from Earth. Hope you're hungry. I've got plenty of food and these folks have amazing appetites. Looked around at the assembled dragons. Up close, they were even more magnificent and more clearly intelligent. Their eyes tracked the newcomers with obvious curiosity and something that might have been amusement. Mister, she began carefully, do you realize you're in the territory of the most dangerous predators known to the Galactic Council? looked puzzled, then glanced around at the dragons. Several of them were making that deep rumbling sound she now recognized as laughter. Dangerous, these guys? Nah, they're just misunderstood. They've got a rich culture, amazing stories, and they really appreciate good barbecue. Turns out dragons have incredibly sophisticated palates. A massive golden dragon, larger than the others, raised its great head. The small firemaker speaks truth, star travelers. We are keepers of flame and forge. We have been alone so long that we had forgotten the joy of sharing warmth with others. But the attacks, protested. Ships destroyed, colonies burned. The golden dragon's eyes dimmed. Defense, not aggression. For 3,000 years, those who came to our worlds brought weapons and fear. They saw monsters where we hoped to find friends. So we became the monsters they expected, driving them away to protect our young and our treasures. Nodded, flipping what appeared to be a perfectly grilled steak. Classic miscommunication. Nobody ever just knocked on the door and said hello. First thing I did was set up camp and start cooking. Food is universal language. Even dragons can't resist good barbecue. The dragon who had escorted them curled up nearby like a massive, contented cat. The human understood what your people could not. He approached with open hands and the offer of shared fire. In dragon culture, this is the highest form of respect. Shared fire. Cooking, explained, grinning as he seasoned another piece of meat. Turns out dragons have a deep cultural connection to controlled flame. Barbecue isn't just food to them, it's art, ceremony, and social bonding all rolled into one. Who knew? Watched in amazement as a young dragon, barely larger than a shuttlecraft, approached with obvious excitement. The human reached out and patted its snout like he might pet a dog, causing the dragon to emit a pleased purring sound. This is, said, she's been helping me perfect my technique. Dragons have some incredible spices grown in their volcanic gardens. Wait until you try the fire pepper marinade. The implications hit like a physical blow. 3,000 years of fear and violence, all based on a misunderstanding. The dragons hadn't been monsters. They'd been an isolated civilization, defending themselves from what they perceived as endless waves of armed invaders. Commander Vex, the golden dragon said formally, I am Prime Speaker of, your friend has opened a door that has been closed for far too long. We would welcome the chance to speak with your Galactic Council, to share our knowledge and learn from others. Your knowledge, asked, gestured with one massive wing toward the crystalline spires in the distance. We are master metallurgists and engineers. Our cities are powered by controlled stellar plasma. We have developed techniques for faster-than-light travel that do not require the rare elements your ships use. And our understanding of genetic medicine could extend the of most council species. The smell of perfectly cooked meat filled the air as called out, dinner's ready. Hope everybody brought their appetites. Watched in wonder as dragons and her crew members mingled around the impromptu feast. Lieutenant Kex was deep in conversation with a silver dragon about quantum mechanics. Chief Malik was being taught dragon writing by an enthusiastic adolescent whose scales shifted color with her emotions. This changed everything. The Council had spent centuries avoiding the most advanced civilization in the galaxy because no one had thought to try diplomacy with a barbecue invitation. Handed her a plate loaded with perfectly grilled meat and strange but delicious-looking side dishes. Not bad for first contact, huh? He said with a wink. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Share food, share fire, share stories. Works every time. As the twin moons rose over Prime, found herself sitting beside, eating the best meal of her life while listening to dragon songs that spoke of loneliness ended and new friendships forged in the flames of a simple barbecue grill. The galaxy would never be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called for the first time in 50 years. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the massive crystalline amphitheater on Nexus Prime, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, chirps, telepathic waves, and electronic pulses that the universal translators struggled to keep up with. At the center of it all sat Commander Vex, still trying to process what she'd witnessed on Prime 3 weeks ago. Her official report had caused riots on some worlds and dancing in the streets on others. The dragons, the galaxy's most feared monsters, wanted to join the Galactic Council. High Chancellor, a massive crystalline being whose species had founded the Council eons ago, struck his ceremonial gong with a sound like mountains breaking. This session will come to order. Commander Vex, please present your findings to the assembled representatives. Stood, her legs still unsteady from the thought of addressing the galaxy's most powerful beings. Honored representatives, everything we believed about the collective was wrong. They are not the mindless predators our histories describe. They are a highly advanced civilization that has been defending itself from what they perceived as invasion attempts. The amphitheater erupted. Senator of the Empire shot to his feet, his red carapace gleaming with indignation. Impossible! My people have lost entire fleets to dragon attacks. They reduced our colony on 442 to glass. Because you tried to establish a military outpost in their sacred nesting grounds, replied calmly. Without permission, without any attempt at communication. From their perspective, you were invading. Representative of the Aquarian depths spoke with bubbling sounds that translated as deep concern. Commander, you speak as if these creatures are rational beings. Our oldest records speak of them as forces of nature, like living hurricanes. I have video evidence, said, activating the holographic display. Observe. The center of the amphitheater filled with images from Prime. Dragons and council species members sharing meals, exchanging knowledge, even playing games together. The recordings showed her own crew learning dragon metallurgy while teaching them about council technology. But it was the final image that silenced the chamber. The human who had started it all, riding on the back of Young as she performed aerial maneuvers for a crowd of cheering dragons and council representatives. The human, Chancellor rumbled. Where is he now? Still on Prime, sir. He's been appointed as the first Galactic Cultural Exchange Ambassador by the dragons themselves. He's teaching them to make ice cream. The silence stretched for long moments before Senator spoke again, his voice much quieter. What do they want from us? Simply to not be alone anymore, replied. They've been isolated for 3. Their children have never seen another species except through weapon sights. They want to trade, to learn, to share their knowledge. And, sir, their technology could revolutionize everything. She activated another holographic display, showing the technical data the dragons had freely shared. Fusion reactors the size of kitchen appliances that could power cities. Medical techniques that could regrow entire organs in days rather than months. Faster-than-light drives that required no exotic matter and left no environmental impact. They're offering to share all of this, continued, in exchange for nothing more than friendship and the chance to participate in galactic society. Representative Keck 7 of the AI Collective processed the information in milliseconds before speaking in electronic tones. Analysis indicates dragon technology exceeds current council capabilities by approximately 300%. Integration would advance galactic civilization by centuries. The question, Chancellor said slowly, is whether we can trust them. 3,000 years of fear cannot be erased by one barbecue dinner. A new voice echoed through the chamber, deep, ancient, and somehow speaking directly to everyone's minds. Perhaps that is a question better answered by those who live it daily. Every representative turned as the chamber's main doors opened. Entered with fluid grace, his massive form somehow fitting through spaces that should have been too small. Behind him walked, still wearing his galaxy's best grill master, apron, and carrying what appeared to be a smoking portable grill. Honored representatives, said, his mental voice warm with amusement. I am of the collective. Prime Speaker sends his greetings and an invitation to feast. The security forces around the chamber tensed, but Chancellor raised a crystalline hand for calm. You were not invited to this session, Dragon. No, said cheerfully, setting up his grill in the center of the amphitheater. But I figured you were all probably getting hungry. Diplomatic sessions always work better when everyone's had a good meal. Mind if I cook while we talk? The absurdity of the situation. A human setting up a barbecue grill in the galaxy's most sacred diplomatic chamber, while a dragon provided philosophical commentary, broke through 3,000 years of protocol. Senator was the first to laugh, a chittering sound that his species made when confronted with something completely unprecedented. Very well, human, cook your food, but know that many here have lost friends and family to dragon fire. Nodded seriously as he began preparing what appeared to be meat from a dozen different worlds. I understand, Senator, and knows that too. That's exactly why we're here. Sometimes the only way to heal old wounds is to break bread together. As the sense of expertly prepared food began to fill the chamber, something extraordinary happened. Representatives who had been rigid with formal protocol began to relax. The crystalline beings resonated with harmonic frequencies that indicated pleasure. The aquatic species created excited bubble streams. "The human speaks wisdom," said, settling into a comfortable position around the cooking area. "We dragons have a saying, 'Fire shared warms all hearts, fire hoarded burns only the hoarder.' We hoarded our fire for 3,000 years, and it nearly consumed us with loneliness." Representative raised a tentacle. "But surely you understand our caution. Your people's reputation for violence is well documented." His great head dipped in what might have been shame. "Violence born of fear and misunderstanding. When your ships first came to our worlds, we tried to communicate. But your universal translators could not parse our language, and our attempts at telepathic contact were interpreted as attacks." "Your ships fired on our minds," Senator protested. "We tried to share memories of welcome and hospitality. Your species interpreted the mental contact as an invasion because you had no context for peaceful telepathic communication. So you attacked, and we defended. Each encounter made the next more violent." Flipped what appeared to be a steak from, seasoned with spices that made the chamber smell like paradise. Classic escalation spiral. Both sides reacting to perceived threats instead of trying to understand intentions. Happens all the time in anthropology. Chancellor leaned forward, his crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns. "What changed? Why did you not attack when Commander arrived?" "Because he brought fire to share, not weapons to threaten," replied. "He approached our scouts with cooking tools and requested permission to prepare food on our territory. In dragon culture, this is the most sacred form of respect, acknowledging our mastery of flame while offering to share its gifts. Plus," added with a grin, "I made sure to research dragon dietary preferences before I landed. Turns out they're omnivores with a preference for charred protein and fermented vegetables. Lucky for me, that's basically barbecue and kimchi." As if summoned by the mention of food, more dragons began entering the chamber. These were smaller than, clearly younger, and their scales shimmered with excitement rather than the darker hues of their elders. "Insisted on coming," explained as the young dragon bounded up to like an enthusiastic puppy. "She has become quite the expert in human cooking techniques." Opened her mouth and breathed out a controlled flame that perfectly seared a row of vegetables had prepared. The precision was incredible, each piece cooked to exactly the right temperature without burning. "She's been helping me develop new techniques," explained proudly. "Turns out dragon fire can be controlled down to the degree. We've been experimenting with temperature gradients that are impossible with conventional cooking." The representatives watched in amazement as and worked together, creating dishes that smelled better than anything ever served in the council chambers. But more importantly, they watched the easy camaraderie between human and dragon, the casual way they communicated with gestures and shared understanding. "This changes much," Chancellor admitted, "if such cooperation is possible." "It's not just possible," Commander said, standing again. "It's already happening. In 3 weeks, the dragons have shared enough technical knowledge to advance our medical science by decades. They've offered to help repair the environmental damage on 17 worlds, and they've asked for nothing in return except friendship." Representative Keck 7's optical sensors focused on. Query: what are the limits of dragon technical cooperation? "No limits save those of physics," replied. "We have learned to shape matter at the molecular level, to harness stellar energies safely, to travel between stars without damaging subspace. But knowledge shared freely grows stronger. Knowledge hoarded grows stagnant." Senator approached the grill area cautiously. "And what of our military concerns? Your people possess weapons that could destroy worlds." "As do you," pointed out gently. "Every species in this chamber has developed weapons of mass destruction. The difference is that we chose to turn our destructive capabilities toward creation instead. Our world-destroying energy beams are now used to terraform dead planets." Handed the senator a plate of food that had been prepared according to dietary needs. "Try the glazed root vegetables. Helped me develop a technique using controlled flame that brings out flavors I never knew existed." The senator took a cautious bite, and his red carapace immediately shifted to a warmer orange that indicated pleasure. "This is extraordinary." "Food is just the beginning," said. Wait until you see what they've done with music or art or literature. Their culture has been developing in isolation for 3,000 years. They've created things the galaxy has never imagined. As if to prove his point, began to hum, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to come from the very stones of the chamber. Other dragons joined in, creating harmonies that made the air itself sing. It was beautiful beyond description, a music that spoke directly to the emotions without need for translation. "We call this the Song of Welcome," explained when the music faded. "We have not sung it for other species in 3. We had hoped we would never need to sing it again." The chamber fell silent except for the gentle sounds of cooking and eating. Representatives who had come prepared for debate found themselves sharing meals with the very beings they had feared for their entire lives. Chancellor finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of Ian's. "A formal vote will be required, of course, but speaking personally, the collective would be welcomed as members of the Galactic Council." The cheer that went up from the young dragons was picked up by representatives throughout the chamber. Even the normally stoic AI collective flashed their optical sensors in patterns that indicated joy. "There will be conditions," Senator said, though his tone was more than hostile. "Reparations for past damages, security guarantees, cultural exchange programs to ensure continued cooperation." "All acceptable," agreed. "We have much to make up for and much to learn. Perhaps Ambassador could coordinate these programs." All eyes turned to, who was still flipping steaks and looking entirely too pleased with himself. "Well, I was planning to retire from studies and open a restaurant, but I suppose saving the galaxy from a 3,000-year-old misunderstanding is pretty good for the resume." Representative bubbled with what the translators rendered as laughter. "A restaurant run by humans and dragons? I would travel across the galaxy to eat there." "Actually," said thoughtfully, "that's not a bad idea. Food really is universal language, a place where all species could come to share meals and cultures. Yeah, I like that. The Galactic Grill has a nice ring to it." Breathed a small puff of flame that somehow managed to perfectly caramelize the surface of every dessert had prepared simultaneously. The technical precision required for such control was beyond what most council species could achieve with their most advanced equipment. "The young ones learn so quickly," said with obvious pride. "Already they are innovating beyond what we old ones taught them. Cooperation truly does breed advancement." As the formal session wound down and representatives began to mingle more freely, sharing food and stories, found herself standing beside Chancellor. "Commander," the ancient being rumbled, "you have witnessed something unprecedented. How do you think history will remember this day?" Watch teaching a group of young representatives how to properly season meat while demonstrated flame control techniques. "I think, sir, that history will remember this as the day the galaxy learned that the best way to end a war is to invite your enemy to dinner." "Wisdom in simplicity," Chancellor agreed. "Perhaps we have been overcomplicating diplomacy for far too long." The evening continued with more dragons arriving, more food being shared, and more barriers being broken down with each shared meal and story. By the time the twin moons of Nexus Prime rose over the chamber, a new era of galactic cooperation had begun. And it all started with a human who believed that any problem could be solved with good food and an open fire. 2 years had passed since the collective joined the Galactic Council, and the changes were visible throughout known space. Dragon-designed ships glided between the stars with impossible grace, their hulls singing with harmonic frequencies that made space travel a form of art. Medical centers staffed by dragon healers had extended across dozens of species. Terraform projects that would have taken centuries now completed in mere years under dragon supervision. But perhaps nowhere were the changes more evident than in the bustling corridors of Harmony Station, the galaxy's first truly integrated community. Built using dragon engineering in the space between 3 star systems, it served as a cultural and commercial hub where every species in the Council could live and work together. At the heart of it all was the Galactic Grill, a restaurant that had become something far more than had ever imagined. The main dining hall stretched across multiple levels, with environmental controls that could accommodate everything from aquatic in their water-filled zones to the crystalline who needed specific mineral atmospheres. The centerpiece was original barbecue setup, now expanded into a cooking amphitheater where beings from across the galaxy could watch dragon-human fusion cuisine being prepared. "Order up for table 17, called out, his hair now completely gray but his enthusiasm undimmed. One spice-rubbed steak, medium rare, with fire pepper sauce and a side of root vegetables. Now fully grown and sporting scales that shifted between deep purple and brilliant gold breathed a perfectly controlled flame across the plate. The technique added both flavor and visual flair as the sauces caramelized under the precise heat. "Table 17 will be very pleased," she said, her mental voice warm with satisfaction. "The spice blend you developed last week has been very popular with our guests." Grinned as he watched one of the new dragon-human cooking teams take over the next order. What had started as his solo operation had evolved into something unprecedented. The first integrated cooking academy where multiple species learned to work together in perfect harmony. Called a familiar voice from across the kitchen. Commander Vex, now promoted to Admiral and serving as the Council's Director of Relations, approached with a data pad in her hands and a concerned expression on her face. "Let me guess," said, not pausing in his preparation of what appeared to be a complex dessert involving crystallized flame. "Another crisis that requires barbecue diplomacy." "Actually, yes," admitted with a rueful smile. "But this one's different. We've received a message from beyond the galactic rim. There's another civilization out there, and they're asking for help." Looked up from his work, suddenly serious. The galactic rim was the edge of known space, beyond which lay only empty void and mystery. No one had ever successfully traveled beyond it and returned. "What kind of help?" The message was fragmentary, transmitted through quantum entanglement across impossible distances. But the core was clear. They're fleeing something. Something that's consumed their entire region of space. Scales darkened with concern. "Who sent this message?" "That's the strange part," continued. "The quantum signature matches dragon technology, but it's older, much older, like it was sent by dragons from thousands of years ago." The kitchen fell silent as the implications sank in. In all their cultural exchanges with the collective, there had never been any mention of other dragon populations beyond the galactic rim. Materialized in the doorway, his massive form somehow fitting through a space that should have been too small. The elder dragon's presence immediately commanded attention from everyone in the kitchen. "The message has been confirmed by our archives," he said gravely. "It comes from the exiled clans, those who were banished from space long before your species achieved interstellar travel." "Banished?" asked. "Why were they banished?" His great head lowered, his mental voice heavy with ancient shame. "Because they chose destruction over creation. While we learned to use our fire to build, they used theirs to consume. When the Great Division came, they were cast out beyond the rim to prevent a war that would have destroyed both our peoples." "And now they're asking for help," said. "The message mentioned something called the Void Singers. Does that name mean anything to your people?" The temperature in the kitchen dropped noticeably as every dragon present shuddered. Scales took on the deep black of absolute terror. "The Void Singers are legend made real," he whispered. "Beings of pure entropy who consume not just matter and energy, but possibility itself. They turn thriving worlds into nothing, not destroyed, but simply erased as if they had never existed." Set down his cooking utensils carefully. "And they're chasing the exiled clans toward our galaxy." "It appears so. The message included navigational data. If their trajectory is correct, both the exiled clans and their pursuers will reach the galactic rim within 6 months." The implications were staggering. If even the legendary destructive power of the exiled dragon clans wasn't enough to stop these Void Singers, what hope did the galaxy have? "We need to call an emergency council session," said. "Already done," replied. "All representatives are gathering in the main assembly hall, but your presence has been specifically requested." "Me, why?" "Because," said with a tone that might have been amusement despite the circumstances, "you have a talent for solving impossible problems with food and friendship. And right now, we need all the impossible solutions we can get." An hour later, the emergency assembly hall buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from every council species processed the news. The holographic display showed the fragmentary message from beyond the rim, along with sensor data that comprehension. Ships the size of moons fleeing through empty space, pursued by something that registered as negative space on their instruments. Chancellor struck his ceremonial gong, the sound somehow conveying both urgency and calm. The situation is unprecedented. We face an enemy that even the exiled clans cannot defeat, approaching our space with the speed of desperate refugees. Senator, his red carapace now marked with honorable scars from his time serving in joint Dragon Council exploration missions, raised a claw. What do we know about these void singers? The prime speaker of the collective materialized in the center of the hall. His golden scales were dimmed with worry. Only fragments from our oldest archives. They are said to exist in the spaces between realities, feeding on the collapse of civilizations. They do not destroy worlds, they edit them from existence entirely. Representative Sequatic Tank bubbled with distress. How does one fight an enemy that unmakes reality? You don't fight them, said quietly from his position near the dragon delegation. You prove that reality is worth preserving. Every eye in the chamber turned to the human chef who had somehow become one of the galaxy's most influential beings. Stood slowly, his mind racing through possibilities. Think about it, he continued. These void singers feed on collapse, on the entropy of civilizations destroying themselves. What if we do the opposite? What if we show them something so full of life and creation and cooperation that it contradicts their entire existence? You propose to cook for entities that erase worlds from existence? Senator asked incredulously. No, said with growing excitement. I propose we throw the biggest, most impossible dinner party in galactic history. Every species, every culture, every tradition represented in one massive celebration of diversity and cooperation. Right at the galactic rim where they'll see it first. The hall erupted in confused murmurs and debates, raised his great head for attention. The human may be correct, the ancient dragon said thoughtfully. In our oldest myths, the void singers are creatures of pure negation. They exist only in the absence of creation. Perhaps the presence of overwhelming creativity could indeed repel them. It's completely insane, Admiral said. Moving the entire galactic population to the rim for a dinner party while reality-eating monsters approach us. Insane enough to work, replied. Plus, we'll need to coordinate with the exiled clans anyway. They know more about the void singers than anyone. This could be our chance to heal that ancient wound while saving the galaxy. Chancellor's crystalline form resonated with thoughtful harmonics. The logistics alone would be staggering, feeding billions of beings from hundreds of species with different nutritional requirements. We have dragon technology now, pointed out. Instant terraforming, matter conversion, faster than light communication. If anyone can pull off an impossible feast, it's us. Stood beside, her scales shifting to the bright silver of determination. I will speak for the young dragons. We have learned much about creation and cooperation in these past 2 years. If there is a chance to face the void with light instead of violence, we must try. The collective agrees, declared. We will provide all technological assistance required. Our forge ships can create food synthesis facilities. Our terraform vessels can prepare suitable environments for all species. The vote, when it came, was surprisingly unanimous. Perhaps because the alternative, a conventional military response to an enemy that consumed reality, offered no hope at all. Over the next 4 months, the greatest logistical undertaking in galactic history took shape. Dragon terraform ships worked around the clock to prepare a massive space station at the galactic rim. Food synthesis facilities capable of producing cuisine for every known species were installed. Communication arrays that could coordinate the efforts of billions of beings were assembled. Found himself appointed as Chief Coordinator of Culinary Operations, a title that would have been laughable 2 years ago, but now carried the weight of galactic survival. He worked with cooking teams from every species, developing fusion cuisines that celebrated the diversity of galactic civilization. The war chefs contributed their knowledge of protein synthesis. The Aquarian depth brewers shared techniques for fermenting nutrients in impossible ways. The crystalline taught methods for infusing meals with mineral harmonics that enhanced flavor across species barriers. Even more remarkably, they made contact with the exiled clans. The first meeting took place in neutral space, within a small diplomatic team approaching the massive refugee ships that limped toward galactic space. The exiled dragons were different from their home-dwelling cousins. By of wandering, their scales darker and their eyes haunted by what they'd witnessed. Their leader, an ancient dragon called, was skeptical of the plan. "You think to defeat the singers with food and fellowship," he rumbled, his mental voice carrying the weight of desperate centuries. "We have tried everything, weapons that could crack stars, magic that could reshape space itself. Nothing has stopped them." "That's exactly why we need to try something different," replied, offering the ancient dragon a carefully prepared meal that incorporated traditional exile spices with modern Galactic Council fusion techniques. "You've been fighting them with destruction. We want to face them with creation." Tasted the food cautiously, and for the first time in centuries, his features showed something like wonder. "This reminds me of home, of the world we left before the Great Division." "Then maybe it's time to come home properly," suggested. "Not as exiles or conquerors, but as family." The reconciliation between the collective and the exiled clans was perhaps the greatest diplomatic miracle of the age. Ancient grievances were set aside in the face of a threat that transcended politics. The exiled clans contributed their knowledge of Void Singer behavior, while the home dragons provided the technology needed for the impossible feast. On the appointed day, billions of beings gathered at the galactic rim. The space station teams had designed was a masterpiece of cooperative engineering. Vast halls where every species could comfortably dine together, environmental systems that could accommodate any physiology, and cooking facilities that turned food preparation into a form of art. As the Void Singers approached, reality bending around them in ways that hurt to perceive, the feast began. It was glorious chaos. Aquarians taught crystallines how to brew fermented minerals, learned dragon fire cooking techniques while teaching their own spice-blending traditions. Humans found themselves cooking alongside beings they'd never imagined, creating fusion dishes that shouldn't have been possible but tasted like paradise. Stood in the central cooking amphitheater alongside, and even ancient. Together they prepared the meal of meals, a dish that incorporated flavors from every world in the galaxy, cooked with techniques from every species, and infused with the hope and cooperation of billions of beings. The Void Singers arrived at the edge of sensor range, their presence making reality itself feel thin and fragile. But as they approached the celebration, as they sensed the overwhelming creativity and cooperation radiating from the feast, something unprecedented happened. They stopped. For the first time in their existence, the Void Singers encountered something they could not negate. The sheer weight of creative cooperation, of billions of beings working together to create rather than destroy, formed a barrier they could not cross. Felt their presence probing at the edges of the feast, trying to find some way to begin their usual process of reality consumption. But everywhere they touched, they found only more creativity, more cooperation, more life being celebrated and shared. Finally, impossibly, the message they left behind was simple and transmitted in pure mathematics that every species could understand. "We seek endings. You have created continuation. We go elsewhere." The celebration that followed lasted 3 days and became known as the Great Feast, an annual tradition where every species in the galaxy came together to share food, stories, and the bonds that held their civilization together. The human chef who had saved the galaxy with barbecue stood in his restaurant on Harmony Station and watched the recordings of the celebration. Curled up beside him, her scales shifting to the warm gold of contentment. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked. "Maybe," replied, flipping a steak with practiced ease. "But if they do, we'll be ready. After all, there's nothing in the universe that can't be improved with good food and good company." Outside the restaurant's viewports, ships from across the galaxy docked at Harmony Station. Dragons flew alongside human shuttles, cruisers traveled in formation with Aquarian bioships, and the crystalline vessels sang harmonies that made the very space around them more beautiful. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson in existence. The universe wasn't saved by the strongest weapons or the most advanced technology. It was saved by beings who chose to create together rather than destroy alone. And it all started with a human who believed that any problem could be solved with good food and an open fire. The end of the story was really just the beginning of something much larger, a galaxy united not by conquest or fear, but by the simple recognition that sharing a meal was the first step toward sharing a future. In his restaurant kitchen, smiled and got back to work. There were always more people to feed, more cultures to discover, and more impossible problems that might just be solved with the right recipe. After all, the galaxy was a big place, and everyone deserved a good meal.